In this video, I will explain how government interventions solve negative externalities. Also, we'll cover positive externalities. However, I forgot to mention one thing in consumer and producer deficit. So let me add my explanation for that. In the third lecture, we learned the case where there is only one equilibrium point, market equilibrium. So supply and demand theory suggests that if the government increases the price from here, market equilibrium, to here, we'll have deadweight loss here. So we were able to see decrease of total amount of social welfare directly. However, now we are dealing with a case which has two equilibrium points, ideal equilibrium and market equilibrium. And in this case, we'll have the deadweight loss outside surplus. So in this slide, this is surplus, and it shows welfare. However, we have deadweight loss here due to overproduction of steel. So to calculate overall amount of social welfare, we'll just subtract this amount from this triangle. Go back to this slide. If a deadweight loss equals C plus D, a total amount of social welfare can be calculated by A plus B minus C plus D. So this is a way to calculate the total amount of social welfare in the context of negative externalities. So now we go back to the main issue of this video, how government interventions can solve negative externalities. The solution suggested by economic theory is to force farmers and buyers to internalize the externalities. Internalize the externality simply means that the government forced farmers and buyers to reflect cost of negative externalities such as pollution on their cost. A typical government intervention of making farmers or buyers internalize externality is taxation. By taxing them for the pollution they create, government forces these actors to pay for the cost of pollution. So let's see the case where a tax will force suppliers, farms, to internalize cost of negative externalities. So let's assume that production of steel causes negative externalities, pollution. So government want to tax farmers rather than consumers. And please remember, this is market equilibrium, the result of self-interested action. And then at this point, farm does not pay tax for pollution, and so they tend to overproduce steels this amount. So the government want to shift this equilibrium to here by using taxes. And finally, farm pay for tax, and then it means farm pays the cost of pollution. And this is a case where consumers rather than producers cause negative externality pollution. And then at this market equilibrium, consumers overconsume gas, and it leads to pollution. So government will impose tax on consumption, and the government will shift this equilibrium to here by reducing the amount of consumption. And finally, due to government intervention, consumers pay cost of pollution. Now we move to another type of externality, positive externality. In the positive externality, self-interested action of buyers or consumers positively affects the third party. For instance, maybe honey producers just produce honey for their profits. However, if farms locate near their apiaries, they can get profits from bees' action because bee can increase pollination in farms. The such goods which have positive externalities are called merit goods. Merit goods include health, education, or housing. However, in many cases, a competitive market or free market cannot encourage farmers to produce goods with positive externalities. So government intervenes through granting of such goods with externalities to encourage production of these goods. So here we'll see it's a case where producers produce a good which has positive externalities less than the socially desired level. So let's assume that the society or government want more production of inoculation which can prevent specific disease, and all the people in a society do not have equal access with these inoculations, because maybe in competitive market farmers provide less at higher price because they want to get more profits only from the rich people, so they don't want to decrease the price, and then they don't need to provide these inoculations for poor people. So as a consequence, such self-interested action of farmers produce less than the society's desired level. So how can the government correct such underproduction of goods which have positive externalities? Typical government intervention is subsidy. So the government might subsidize the production of goods which have positive externalities. In the case of inoculations, in the competitive market, the farms provide only this level, and this is not sufficient for all the people in a society to get inoculations. So government subsidize this farm to shift this market equilibrium here at ideal equilibrium. There is another perspective of positive externalities. Consumers rather than producers might cause underproduction of goods which have positive externalities. So in the case of inoculations, consumers might consume less than the socially desired level because inoculations are too expensive for most of people. If that is the case, the government will encourage consumers to consume more inoculations. So typical government intervention to correct such underproduction is voucher or consumer tax credit. Government might give consumers a voucher or tax credit, and as a consequence, consumers will increase the consumption of inoculations because they receive voucher or consumer tax credit. In sum, in a free market, farms might overproduce goods which have negative externalities because they don't consider the cost of negative externalities such as pollution. In that case, government tax these farms. Also, in a free market, farms might underproduce goods which have positive externality to get more profits. In that case, government subsidize the production of these goods which have positive externalities. So please remember that externality has two dimensions, supply side and demand side. If consumers cause externalities, we might tax or subsidize consumers to correct externalities. This is the end of this lecture. In lecture 3 and 4, we took 2 days for each because these are very fundamental for economics, If you don't understand these concepts, please repeat watching this video, or you might read the course readings several times. In your assignment, you are asked to graph positive and negative externalities, so please be ready to do so. Thank you for listening to this long lecture.